All right, Cougars. So this is where we stopped with our last video. We're starting to get into the naval aspects of World War One. So May 1915, we are almost to one full year of war. Remember, this year was 4 years long, or this war was 4 years long. So we're 1915. War started in 1914, and the British ships decided to set up a blockade. And so a blockade is just a fancy word for a wall of ships. All right, so think of it this way. If you put a bunch of armed naval ships in the water and you form a wall, other ships can't get through. And so that's exactly what the goal was of the British blockade, is to stop goods from getting to Germany. This includes food and resources for Germans to use to make more tanks, make more guns, weapons. And so basically it's cutting Germany off. And so got to remember that aspect, that main cause, imperialism. Britain and France were still getting shipments and resources from their colonies to help support the war. So what Germany does in response is it declares a sea war, basically a naval war on British, and then also all Allied ships. So Germany starts to use submarines, and so submarines are new. Submarines have never been used in wars before, and the advantage is submarines can go out, and really only other submarines can take them out, right? Because if you're a ship and you're above water, it's very difficult for you to take out a submarine, especially if you can't see it. And so that's why the Germans decided to use these. They had just been invented. So the Germans have started this naval war. And in 1915, just after they declare this naval war, they bomb a ship called the Lusitania. Now, this is important because the Lusitania was a passenger ship. It wasn't a warship. However, it was later discovered that Lusitania did have supplies on it for the British war effort. And the Germans claimed this as well at the time of the bombing. So they bombed the Lusitania. Well, there was 128 Americans on board. So guess which country is not very happy about this attack? Well, President Wilson at the time decided to keep the United States out of the war. And so the U.S. does not go to war based on this bombing of the Lusitania. However, it does not do any favors for Germany or Austria-Hungary even in terms of winning some American favor. So Americans are already kind of starting to take a side here if they haven't already. Well, fast forward to about 2 years later in 1917, Germany now ups its game a little bit, and it declares warfare, submarine warfare, on all ships. That's what unrestricted means. It means if we see a ship, we're shooting it down if it's not ours. So this upset the United States. You got to remember, the United States was engaging in trade. They traded a lot with Great Britain. They traded a lot with France and other European countries. And the United States at this point had stayed out of the war because they saw that interest in trade. But now Germany might be attacking their ships too. And the United States, obviously does not like that very much. They like being able to trade with their European allies. So Germany starts to attack U.S. ships too, or says that it can at least. Well, then in January 1917, so this is the same year they make that announcement, Germany has something they do called the Zimmermann Note. And the Zimmermann Note is they knew that they had upset the United States. They knew the United States was not their best friend right now. And so they try to build an alliance. We talked about alliances. That was the causes of World War I, right? Well, secret alliances were very common and popular. And so Germany tried to create a secret alliance with Mexico. And what they had promised Mexico is if the United States gets involved in the war and Mexico supports Germany and attacks the United States, to keep the United States busy, because Germany knows it can't take on the entire United States as well. So Germany promises Mexico that they can have some of their old land back from before the U.S. took it. So that included Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico. However, the British received the notes before the Mexican government did, and they told the U.S. about it. Well, the the U.S. was not very happy about this disarmament note because they saw it as Germany trying to essentially declare war on the United States through involving Mexico. Well, fast forward to about 2 months later, 8 U.S. ships are sunk, and the U.S. is now joining the war here in 1917. So with 8 U.S. ships sunk by the German Navy, the U.S. Congress declares war on April 2nd, 1917. So 1917, about almost halfway through the year, is when the U.S. joins. So once Congress declares war on Germany, after the Lusitania being hit and after the Zimmermann Note asking Mexico to come on the side of Germany against the United States, they're in it. Well, by June, we already got some U.S. troops, commonly known as doughboys at the time, arrive in Europe. And you gotta remember, these other troops for 3 years have been in the trenches. And they've either been underfed, there have been food shortages, they're tired, they haven't seen their families. It's not like they were there for 3 months and got to go home for a little bit and then come back to the war front. So they're tired. Well, these U.S. troops, they are fresh and they are ready to fight. And so these troops were a big advantage to the Allies. They're a breath of fresh air and energy. So fast forward a little bit. So by October 1918, the U.S. had really started to push Germany back. And Germany was collapsing, both economically and as well as their war effort support. They had gone to what's called a total war. So all of their resources were going towards the war front. That's what total war means. So every able-bodied person was being put towards the war. And so by October 1918, Germany had enough, could no longer continue the war, and had asked for an armistice. An armistice is just a fancy way of saying peace. They wanted a peace treaty. So this would stop all fighting on land, in the air, and in water, so the sea. Well, that was in October, and by November 11th, 1918, Germany signed the armistice, and World War I finally came to an end. So after World War I came to an end, this is where we start to see things like the Treaty of Versailles and the negotiation of war reparations, which is war. Think of it as like penalties that for the losing side. And we will go over that later.